I'm not here to muck you around with a long intro, so here are my top 10 most anticipated new strategy games for 2023. I had a difficult time narrowing down this list. There'll be something here for everybody, and probably a couple of unexpected picks. Let's jump straight in with my first one, though, and I feel like this is a really solid pick. This is Manor Lords, and if you haven't seen me already cover it on the channel, we did have access briefly to a demo, but only a demo of the city builder variant or sort of segment of Manor Lords, and that's because Manor Lords brings a lot to the table. Here you can see the regional view, again only on the demo build, but it's important to note that this is a city builder within a city builder within a strategy game, and there's also a really interesting combat system that resembles sort of a real-time Total War-like combat. We'll take a look at that in a moment, but first it's important to note that, of course, at its core, this is a medieval city-building strategy game. And as you can see, as I plot out some locations for some houses during the brief week that we had with the demo, it's a fairly fluid and smooth one, developed almost exclusively by a lone developer, although with the wonderful guidance, I'm sure, and the publishing help of Hooded Horse now behind the title. I'm really looking forward to seeing how Manor Lords develops, and in particular how our little sort of quaint medieval towns and cities then turn to this, its combat system, which, as I said before, resembles Total War. Real time, you're playing it out on the map. However, as the trailer demonstrates, there are lots of interesting nuances here, including the fact that the terrain matters, but more than that, the equipment that you provide, and I'm sure create, manufacture, or trade for within your cities and territories that you're building, it makes a real difference to how the battles will play out on the battlefield. That, and probably also the orders that you choose to give. I'm really excited for Manor Lords, and you can expect to see more of it here on the channel. However, there's a lot more to come for 2023, and the next slot on my list goes to a game that we haven't heard much about for a little while. Published, I believe, by Xbox and developed by Oxide Studios. This is History Untold, and honestly, this is sort of a Civilization competitor in that it's, yeah, okay, a city building game, but by and large, this is a 4X historical strategy game. One that looks to break away a little bit from the mold of Civilization, at least according to the information that they've given us on their website. We're yet to see much in terms of real gameplay, is that this game will allow us to explore a living world, ruled our own way, building our own nation, although we've seen from trailers and screenshots that there's lots of real-world history grounded in it, and finally look to grow and defend a nation to win the game in ways that are a little bit more nuanced than what other 4X historical strategy games. History Untold is attempting to give us the ability to tell a history-driven but slightly fictional story in a 4X world. I'm looking forward to it. And we'll have to wait and see, just like we'll have to wait and see with the next edition on my list, which is Baldur's Gate 3. Shout out to the Olmec gang in the comments below. I've heard so many good things about this game, which has been in early access for a while. It's important to note it's eyeing up its full release in August of 2023. And unlike the previous entry on my list, History Untold, which didn't have that concrete release date or an early access version, Baldur's Gate 3 has both. But you might rightly be asking, what is this? And why am I watching a trailer that looks like this for a strategy game? And there, maybe you catch a glimpse of exactly why. And if you've played a game like the recently released Marvel's Midnight Suns, you might have probably a better understanding. This is, of course, an RPG game, right? It reeks of RPG. Just look at every single scene, shot, and character. However, it's also really at its core a strategy game. I would argue just as much as it is an RPG. However, it's important to note that it delivers, allegedly, a fairly story-rich, choices matter kind of experience. And in its early access state at the moment, I think you can get around 20 hours worth of solid gameplay, more and more, of course, with each update. Personally, I'm at the moment still holding off for its full release, but the important thing to note here about how it brings in the strategy inside of the single player or multiplayer world is in the way that it enables us to take a turn-based approach, both in the RPG setting, where we can pause time to make decisions, but also in the individual battles and levels that play out. They're well designed, and I'm looking forward to seeing how Baldur's Gate 3 develops. The next entry on my list is a particularly spicy one, and again it comes from the publisher of Hooded Horse. This is Espiocracy, and Espiocracy is something a little bit different from one of my favourite periods in human history, the Cold War. Espiocracy is a grand strategy game, which will allow us to play one of 74 playable nations, potentially rewriting the course of history, but more importantly, it's about influence. It's about staging coups, waging proxy wars, and trying to establish the New World Order, whichever one that may be. The crucial thing that's got me excited about Espiocracy, and the fact that it's being published by Hooded Horse as well, is with the release of, or the early sort of reception to Terra Invicta in 2022, it got me excited about what grand strategy could offer at this scale. My hope is that it will dumb it down slightly in comparison to Terra Invicta, deliver the Cold World setting, the Cold War setting that it looks to be delivering really well in the limited looks that we've had so far, and bring in that real historical strategy game element to it as well. I'm quietly, or maybe loudly, quite excited for this little indie title. We'll have to see, of course, when it releases. We don't yet know a release date, unfortunately. Moving on to the next title in my list, and this one, similar to a few other noteworthy games that are releasing in 2023, is Company of Heroes 3. Of course, this is a franchise rich in history, and at the time of recording, it's actually very close to releasing, by the looks, on the 23rd of February 2023, I believe. And similarly to some of the earlier entries on this list, here's looking at you, Baldur's Gate 3 in particular, it looks to stretch across a couple of genres, and you can probably tell by looking at the trailer. We don't tend to see trailers like this for strategy games unless they look to stretch out across something else like RPG. But of course, in this case, it's obviously not going to be a role-playing game, although, hey, maybe there is space for a World War II style, I don't know. Either way, this is a strategy action real-time game, and of course it delivers kind of two, or you could even argue three different arenas of gameplay, but in particular it delivers two. The first is the action, where we play on the battlefield, right? Real-time playing it out. And then the second element, and the second sort of arena, is that stepped back approach, where it's more about command and tactics, like a traditional strategy game, and from the position of a general. Moreover, though, of course, this is, unlike some of the other entries in this video, really rich in history. Of course, Company of Heroes 1 and 2, I mean, that goes without saying, right? But we should also expect quite a comprehensive release schedule after it releases in February of 2023 as well. And with technical multiplayer tests recently playing out fairly well, I'm quite optimistic, actually, for Company of Heroes 3. And its ability to hopefully deliver a really carefully balanced, but hopefully beautiful mixture of strategy and wartime action. It's also important to note here that, as I mentioned at the start, there are a few other games releasing in 2023. In fact, I'm starting to wonder, is this the year of the RTS? The comeback is real? Maybe it is. I kind of hope it is, actually. My slowing reflexes perhaps disagree with me, but nonetheless, there are a couple of other interesting games that stretch this specific genre. A shout out off the top of my head to Total Conflict Renaissance being one particular one, but as we move through the rest of this list, you'll note that it and Company of Heroes 3 are not alone. If you enjoy this kind of content, by the way, I should be hopefully playing every single game on this list, on this channel this year. So if you're not already clicking the red button or the black and white button, whatever color the subscribe button is at the time of watching, you should grace it with a click. And without any further ado, we're going to move on. And before we do, I just want to quickly warn you that the next entry on the list is something a little bit different. Let's take a look at Minecraft Legends. It's an upcoming, believe it or not, action strategy game, just like Company of Heroes 3. No. But it's developed by Mojang, of course, and Blackbird Interactive as well, I believe, and published by Xbox. It's set to release on every console known to man in the first half of 2023. And as obviously a spin-off from Minecraft, but here you get to see some looks at actual gameplay. It brings us into Minecraft's world. The plot essentially is that the Minecraft universe, as it were, take a look at that, is Well, it's being faced by an invasion of those little piglings from the nether, and as it spreads into the overworld, you, the hero, must unite the banner and save the world. The events of Legends take place in are neither fact nor fiction in the Minecraft universe, but rather a side tale. What matters to us here is that it's going to attempt to bring, again, a real-time action and strategy blend, but this time seemingly in one board, in one sitting, rather than pulling us out and, say, making us command and then putting us into the driver's seat. We'll have to wait and see, because there's still a lot that we don't know about Minecraft Legends, but we will see it in 2023. I think I'll give it a whirl. Why not? And moving along to the next entry in my list, and, well, actually, before I get to it, let me introduce it. This is Falling Frontier, and with a soundtrack that feels, and sound effects that feel absolutely fantastic, and in a world, as you can see, that looks very beautiful. Space games do, of course, have the ability of being able to pull us into very dramatic sci-fi worlds, and I think that from what we've seen of Falling Frontier, it does a wonderful job at doing that. But the hesitation that I brought up at the start when introducing it was because I believe that Falling Frontier might have been on my video just like this one last year at the games that I was looking forward to the most for 2022. Developed by Stutter Fox Studios and published again by Hooded Horse, a longtime friend of the channel and really quickly becoming one of my favorite publishers in the space. I believe that Falling Frontier has been on my wish list for quite some time now, and at the time of recording on Steam, it is scheduled for a planned release date of 2023. We don't know anything more specific than that, but I remain just as excited as I was, although now, of course, it's facing more and more stiff competition. Falling Frontier is a sci-fi real-time strategy game, and one that delivers a really immersive world, not just in the, say, visuals, or the audio, the sound effects that I was talking about earlier, but also in how the gameplay plays out. It's a game about logistics, reconnaissance, supply lines, but also, of course, about conflict. Conflict that centers around a real crew who bring their own unique attributes to your playthrough, but also, of course, to shipbuilding and warfare. It is, after all, 2245, and we're fighting these epic real-time battles in space. We're bringing in our crew, that personal crew, and maybe the ships that we've designed, the gear that we've collected, and pulling it together in, as you can see, what looks like a truly impressive setting. I remain, as I say, excited about this game, about the way that it manages logistics and supply, but also in the battles, about the way it really captures combat. The small elements that we've heard about how shots can strike unintended targets if they miss, or ricochet off certain hulls and hit other ships, or environmental features as well. I mean, look at all those rocks. I'm excited to see Falling Frontier when we receive Falling Frontier, and you can bet your backside I will be covering it a little bit more here on the channel when we do hear more about it. Moving along to the next item in my list, and this one was a slightly late entry, one that's only recently come onto my radar. This is Broken Arrow. Broken Arrow, again, is a strategy come action RTS, but this time set in a modern wargame setting. It boasts itself on being perhaps on a larger scale of real-time warfare tactics than what a lot of other games on this list will be. However, little is known about it yet, including, to be honest, its specific release date. We know it will be single player and have multiplayer online, which is great, and at the moment it's boasting around or over 200 different realistic military units and technologies that we're able to battle with. Again, these sound like great detail, but until we know more, it'll be difficult to say. What we do know is that we'll be able to build our army deck by choosing from over those 200 different units. Part of the battle won by planning the units that we're bringing, the other part by how we actually play it out. There's a lot of customization involved behind those units as well, and then once your strategizing is done, once you've brought in units from across 7 different categories, which is pretty cool. You've got support and logistics on one side, air units, land on the other. It's then into the actual combat itself, where you deploy units onto a battlefield and use helicopters, boats, paratroopers, or whatever to engage and hopefully seize the objective when the fight, maybe disrupt enemy supply lines and logistics along the way. It looks like an interesting action strategy blend. And again, is this the year of the RTS 2023? Maybe it is. We saw some nice starts as well this year and coming into 2023 with games like Dune Spice Wars. It looks bright. Moving along to the next item on my list. This is Mars Tactics, and for this one I want you to think kind of XCOM meets turn-based indie strategy game. This one, again, published by Hooded Horse. I swear this is not at all a sponsored or affiliated video with Hooded Horse. They just so happen to make a lot of strategy games that I'm interested in. Mars Tactics is that turn-based strategy sci-fi game, but with a twist. I like not only its playful art style, but also some of the extra things that it delivers. Yes, it's got that classic turn-based tactics, but it does look to bring some fairly advanced combat, ballistics, destruction, environmental features, as you can see here. It also brings through the element that I really like about this kind of game, with characters who have unique personalities. Ones that we can upgrade and develop on the fly as well, as you can see. And that's of course set on a strategic world with squad management, a strategic layer overall, planning and economy and assets to manage. I'm excited to play Mars Tactics and really sink into the full release in 2023. And again, shout out to Hooded Horse for having a lot of games on this list. It looks like it's going to be a really favourable year for them too, at least fingers crossed. Moving along to what is probably the last and potentially the most anticipated item on this list for some people. It's Frostpunk 2. Frostpunk 2 is a strategy, survival city builder game set in a post-apocalyptic kind of survival setting. As you can see, it's fairly rough. Now, Frostpunk 1, that kind of steampunk city builder post-apocalyptic game, was and actually remains fantastic. It's one of the best deals that you can pick up often in a Steam sale as well, and there's a reasonable amount of hype around its sequel, Frostpunk 2. Again, little is known about this title. In fact, we don't yet even fully have its release date, but from what we've heard from the developer diaries, from what we've seen, and from what we've been teased, including in somewhat cinematic trailers like the one that you're watching right now, it looks to probably bring what we loved about the original Frostpunk, its setting, its harsh survival elements and city building, into a whole new dimension, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how it plays out. But man, I'm going to need some more information about it first. And that brings me to the end of this video. Of course, there are a whole lot of other interesting things that could be hitting our shelves this year, including more DLC and expansions for games that I love, like Victoria 3, Civilization 6 and its Leader Pass, Humankind, many others. And I'll be sure to try and cover as many as I can, as well as some of the great games that released in 2022 in emerging access, like Dune Spice Wars, say Songs of Conquest, Heroes of the Storm, to name a few. Thanks for watching, everybody, and I'll see you next time.